Hello and welcome to the Voices in Action podcast. I'm your host, Lily Mott. This podcast is co-produced by the National Lottery Community Fund and Be the Change Media Network. It is all about youth social action, what it means, why it matters, and the incredible young people driving change in their communities. Youth social action is all about young people finding their voice, standing up for what matters to them, and creating positive change. Today on the podcast, we have Nadine, Fatemah, and Ffion, and Nadine works on the National Lottery Community Fund's UK Fund program and gets to work alongside the incredible youth voice advisors in the UK portfolio. And we have Fatemah and Ffion, who are youth voice advisors. So I'm so thrilled to be able to talk with all of you. I think that this is such a wonderful group to have on the podcast, and I'm super excited to just dive right in and get to know a little bit more about all of this work that you do. For the listeners that are new to the podcast and new to the role of youth voice advisors, can you each introduce yourselves and say a little bit about what each of your roles involve? Because I know that was a very brief introduction for all of you. So maybe we can get started with Nadine and then go around our little circle here. But if that's okay, let's dive right in.
Sure, thank you. Yes, my name's Nadine. I've worked at the fund for nearly 2 years at this point and worked with the Youth Voice Advisors since about April last year. My role is supporting the Youth Voice Advisors and making sure that they have a great experience as best as I can, as well as kind of being the link point with the UK Fund programme and supporting our staff, making sure all the processes are as smooth as possible, and kind of communicating between the staff and the Youth Voice Advisors.
That's wonderful. That is a great place to get started. Ffion, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Ffion. I don't remember how long I've been here. I'm not going to lie, guys. As youth voice advisors are a part of the assessment process of all the applications for grants that come in. And that can be at the first stage, which is where we do peer review, or the second stage where we do our calls. But yeah, that's it.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Ffion. That was a great intro. And Fatemah, do you want to go for it?
Yeah, thank you, Lily. So I'm Fatemah. I'm one of the youth advisors with the fund. Well, just to remind you, Ffion, we've been here since June last year. And I still remember I was back then in Blackpool. But I live in Scotland. But part of the role is really, as Ffion have said, is about peer reviewing. So we're heavily involved in reviewing applications, and the whole point of that is to ensure organisations are meaningfully involving young people in the work they do. So we as a team work together to ensure this has been clearly said in the actual application, but also the most, I would say, exciting part of the role is also get to meet young people across the UK from organisations who applied for the fund, and you get to hear about their journey and their lived experience, and I think that's just the most exciting and the unique part of our role.
That is wonderful. I think that was a perfect combo of both of your perspectives and kind of when you joined. I would love to know, Fatemah, my first question is for you. You've been involved in youth voice spaces for a long time. You've done youth parliament to mental health advocacy to all these different roles. What drew you to becoming a youth voice advisor with the fund?
Yeah, so it started back, as you mentioned, being a member of the Youth Parliament. Around 2 years ago, the people, like the young people in Scotland, have voted. One of their key priorities were they wanted to see protection to the youth sector and investment as well. So this is one of the key campaigns we've been working on, is to invest in and protecting youth work services. As we know, this sector can face significant challenges with underfunding and all that. And it's also coming from my lived experience as being a young person and being part of the community and volunteering in a youth group. And I've seen how the funding can have an impact on the young people, the opportunities they might have. And I thought this was a great opportunity to be part of this role and to make a really meaningful difference and contribute, hopefully, to the fund.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Ffion, you've spoken about feeling invisible as a young person in adult-led systems, and I would love to know what it's meant for you to step into this role as a youth voice advisor and to be involved in shaping funding decisions in this way.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, much like Fatemah, I've had many great opportunities to step in some pretty serious spaces. And I think something that I had realized across all of them is that even though there's a lot of progress going on right now, young people are still kind of looked down upon and kind of not treated as equally in the spaces that they should be. And so kind of taking on this role has meant a lot to me, actually. And I think I say that a lot, is it's definitely something that has changed. It sounds dramatic, but has changed my life and kind of the way that I walk into rooms. I remember the first time we ever got the opportunity to be in a room with the past youth voice advisors, and they're now in different positions that are a little bit higher, like not higher up, but in like a different part. And I thought, like, to me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. It was like unbelievable for me to see that there was young people kind of almost in every single place within the organization. And so that baffled me completely. And then also I remember one of my first calls was quite a difficult one. And I remember when we had kind of feedback on how our calls went, I saw that the feedback that I had given directly impacted like how that application went on. And like that was crazy. I was like, oh my God, wait, I said that. I would like they heard me, and like that did something. And like that was so crazy. And like even now I've, because of being here and because of how respected I feel and how heard I feel, I walk into other rooms and I expect the same thing. Like, I don't know how to explain that in any other way. Like, any room I walk into, if people look at me as if kind of like, and it does happen, like, people look at me as if to say, oh, like, you don't deserve to be here, sort of thing. I'm like, well, no, actually, I do deserve a seat at this table. I didn't need an invitation to be here. I should be here. And, like, that's not something that I felt strongly about before being here and getting to work with everyone. And I think that's just something that has like really stuck with me. And like Fatemah said, it's been lovely to meet all the young people that we've had chance to work with. And it's also been really nice to kind of see the impact it's had on them when they've realised that they're actually being listened to and being heard and like their opinions are going places. I definitely see the difference in a lot of the young people we talk to at the start of a call versus the end of the call when they're leaving. And that makes me feel really warm inside when that happens, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's nice to know that they're walking away with confidence too, knowing that what they have to say matters. And so yeah, it has meant a lot. It's been really weird. And I remember talking to Nadine about it when we first started. I was like, this is crazy. This is a completely different atmosphere to what I'm used to. And like the best way I can describe it is I felt so important, and like that's so weird. Like I was like, oh my God, I actually have a purpose here. Like this is crazy. Like what I have to say is going to have an impact. So I have like what I have to say is of value. So it was really weird, but it's meant a lot, and I do carry it into every single thing that I do. And I'm actually like, I know we'll talk about that further, but I'm actually really looking forward to carrying on. And it's just been great working with everyone too. But yeah.
I love that. I'm going to be super cheesy. And you said that that makes you feel warm when you go, when you've seen this evolution. And that makes me feel warm. Having done a couple episodes of this podcast, that is so wonderful. And I think it's a wonderful way to capture this experience. So thank you for saying that. I was just like grinning this whole time for the people who are just listening to this and not watching. Nadine, from the fund's perspective, why is it important to embed youth voice advisors directly into shaping grant making rather than just consulting young people occasionally when you need to, kind of checking that box? Why is that important?
I think Ffion actually answered this better than I ever could with what she's just said, in saying that young people don't need an invite, they deserve to be there. And that's probably sums it up. But I guess from a more organisational perspective, we have kind of an organisational commitment to embed youth voice across the fund. And the youth voice advisor model is one way that we do that. And I think is, again, what Ffion said about kind of getting youth voice at different levels within the organisation and within the grant making process. I think is so important to kind of integrate youth voice rather than just have it on the side. And particularly with the UK Fund, when we're making decisions on grants that are for young people or with young people, I mean, it just makes sense to have young people consider them and feed into that assessment process. So I think it's very exciting. But I also think it just makes sense. So yeah, I guess organizational commitment to embed it across the fund.
Whenever I ask questions like that on this podcast, I feel like the simple answer is just kind of like, well, it's obvious. Like we've listened to Ffion and Fatemah already, and I think that that's what you have both said is so indicative. Ffion, go for it.
I think as well, like off what Nadine said as well, is like something that I've noticed that, especially within the fund, is that it's very like co-production rather than consultation. It's not being brought to us and then being like, oh, like the young people said you red, so we'll choose red for blah blah blah. We're a part of the process, and it's like I can physically and have seen that young people are a part of like all the other processes too, and it's just so cool. It just is so cool. And it's like, especially even now, like when people do involve young people in like the big decisions and things like that, it is more of a consultation and asking, well, what do you think about this, rather than actually like integrating them and involving them in the process, which is like what we have, I feel like. And it's just really cool. But that's something I've definitely kind of noticed, especially when I go back to the projects that even I thought were like really great and like had properly involved young people. I'm like, oh, well, actually that's more of like a consultation rather than a co-production, which is here and feels a lot more powerful. But yeah,
I think that's actually the perfect segue into my next question. So thank you for that. But when people hear young people advising on grants, and I'm putting that in quotes for the people listening, they might not know what that really looks like. I think it's a very unique experience. It shouldn't necessarily be. I think that we need this to happen more often and in other spaces. But I think that it is this model that the National Lottery Community Fund is really championing. And it's amazing to see the progress that the fund has made. But people might not know what that means, young people advising on grants. Can you both talk me through some of the kinds of decisions that you've made, some of the conversations that you've been involved in? Tell me about that.
Well, it's like an interesting role, but really the way it often works is we get applications and we read it on our own time individually to just allow us to prepare and reflect on what we think about the application. Then we come together as a team, me, Ffion, Molly, and we come together and we just share ideas, what we think about the application, how well they're implementing youth voice in their work, what's their plan forward. And it's just the whole point of doing that is just we want to make sure they are truly and meaningfully involving young people in their work, rather than like more consulting, which Ffion kind of spoke on. We come together, we have a really interesting discussions, and then we come by the end, and Nadine kindly she writes up all the notes, and we all kind of come into an agreement what are the key points we want to get across for each application. And yeah, that's how it really works. You know, I guess the best way to explain it is the power of the team coming together and, you know, sharing all our ideas and unique perspectives, which makes like the decision making collective and more meaningful. Ffion, do you like to add anything on that?
you've pretty much like summed it up really well. We also take part in calls with young people. So after we've had an application at peer review, it'll then be passed on to the next stage, hopefully. And then if it is, we'll have an opportunity to have a conversation with the young people that are involved in the organisation. We have baseline questions. They're always the same for the young people. And it's just kind of to get a grasp of what their journeys look like, how they've felt meaningfully involved, and like the things that they have gained, and like the things they will go on to do, and how they feel about their experience as a whole, sort of thing. And it kind of gives us like a really good insight into like the background part, like, it's one thing to read an application, I think, and it's a completely different thing to speak to the young people themselves. So it's always really nice. And then we kind of just we have a what we call a write up, and then that will go off, and yeah. But it's I feel like the process itself is pretty solid, but we all, like, our experiences vary. Like, we all, something I think is really cool and important is that as youth voice advisors, me, Fatemah, and the other 2 youth voice advisors, we all have like our own kind of process when we do things like calls and when we write things up and things like that. And it's kind of is the word versatile? Very versatile? Yeah, it's a very versatile experience. So we might do things differently, and it's really great because like, we can always find a way that works for us and a way that works for the young people that we're working with, which I think is really cool. And I think it's been quite crucial as well to make sure that young people we're working with feel quite comfortable. And yet, like, that's just kind of another part of it. But I think Fatemah covered most of it. But it's just it is quite a laid back process. As Fatemah said, like, even when we do our calls, we have a chance to look over applications and do everything beforehand so that we're not put on the spot and so that we're fully prepared. And like, the young people are also usually fully prepared, having the questions beforehand and things. So it just kind of makes sure that it's a really relaxing and chill process for everybody involved, if all goes well. But yeah.
That sounds wonderful. My next question, Nadine, after hearing all of that, I'd love to know from your perspective, how has having youth voice advisors changed the way that staff approaches grant making, and maybe how the decisions are made when it comes to grant making, especially with work that has to do with young people? Tell me about that. That's a huge question. So again, take that however you would like, but tell me about that.
Yeah, no worries. I think just before I do that, just I guess a bit of a clarification, because I think we discuss things but people might not know. So with the UK Fund, we have a 2-stage application process. So there's like an initial review, and if we think that it is kind of strong enough and meets certain criteria, we will progress it to the 2nd stage and have like a more in-depth assessment, and then a final decision is made. So when we talk about peer review and the youth voice advisors peer review, that is the 1st stage, and then the full assessment is when they have their calls with the young people, and that's why it's a bit more kind of in-depth. So yeah, just to kind of clarify that. So as they've said, they are then involved at both stages of the assessment, and I think the way it impacts staff is, I mean, directly it feeds into our assessment. So after the peer review, I will pass on as they've said, they kind of come together to collate some main points, which I pass on to the officer that's leading on that assessment. So it forms part of our discussion as a team, or as a kind of broader program team, discussing the application. And we kind of, staff have often commented about how useful it is to read what the youth voice advisors have said. So it influences our decision at that point. And then at the final decision making stage, when a panel makes the decision, the panel members have also commented on how useful it is. So the write-up after the call then gets put into the assessment paper, and the panel get to read what our youth voice advisors have said from their call. So the panel also have said how much they look forward to reading that part, and almost like, not skip ahead, but almost like really are excited to get to that part that the youth voice advisor had written, to see their thoughts and how useful that is. And I also would say, because we are still, as a program, relatively new to including youth voice, it's a process that we're continuing to build on. I think also having the youth voice advisors helps us all learn what good youth voice looks like and what it doesn't look like, and how it can be flexible and things like that. And kind of the more that they contribute and feed in, the more we also learn. So yeah, I guess it kind of is directly on those applications, but also our learning process as well.
That's awesome. I think that also segued me really well to these next questions that I have for both you, Ffion, and Fatemah. I would love for both of you to answer this one. Have there been moments where you felt like your lived experience or your input into these different processes changed how staff understood an application or a community need? Have you seen some of those shifts throughout this process?
I will go first. I would say yes, my lived experience definitely has kind of impacted the way I've worked and kind of how that's looked. Obviously, it's hard because we don't talk about like specific applications, but I do remember there was a specific application that I was like, maybe we should look at this a little bit differently when we were at peer review. And after that, the application like kind of went back a little bit and then came forward in a way that suited that application more. And I got to be a part of the second part of the process, which was the call process, and it looked a lot different to the calls I normally do and we normally partake in. But it was just really awesome to see that kind of after we had all discussed it and kind of looked at it from a different perspective, like with our own opinions, that it had kind of changed the entire approach, which was really cool. And it was a really, really fun experience. And I did learn a lot on that. But I think that was a specific time, and also kind of when speaking with the young people, when I'm hearing them talk about the things that they're passionate about, I can kind of resonate with that. It feels like we're kind of on the same level, and it's like really helpful, especially like when it comes to write-ups. I kind of understand a bit more like where those young people are coming from with the experience I have had in life, we shall say. I don't think I would maybe have that outlook on it like if I didn't. So I would say it has definitely impacted kind of the work I have done and like we have done. And it's just been, it's been really cool to see.
I love what you said, Ffion. You summarised it really well. I think this role makes it really unique because often we come and read these applications. We're obviously assessing based on the information in there, but sometimes you can totally resonate with things that are mentioned in there, and we often have these discussions as a team. And I think Nadine and like us as youth voice advisors, like we're all feeling like this taken into consideration as a lived experience and as something you have seen. We all come from very diverse and unique backgrounds with different experiences, which makes it more, I would say, realistic when assessing these applications. And when organizations come with, like, for example, proposals of the work they want to do, it kind of, like, as a young person who might have similar experiences of what it's been shared, it's kind of, you can tell, like, is this something like, oh, definitely, as a young person, I feel this is something community actually needs, or this is something young people would actually benefit for, or maybe that's just the organisation being really, enthusiastic, and it might not be achievable or it might not benefit young people. So definitely, yeah.
Something like that I think is also really important is, although like I feel like our lived experience has directly impacted like how we work and how we've spoken as a team, it's been really interesting to experience how other people, like the other two youth voice advisors and everyone else in the team, has communicated because of their lived experience. Like Fatemah said, we're all very different people. Hearing everybody else's opinion and seeing where they're coming from, especially when we do peer review and when we have team meetings and things like that, it's been really interesting. I'd say it's made me a lot more open-minded. I'm like, and a lot more understanding, even though I'd love to say I was like really understanding before. It's kind of expanded on that. Like sometimes Fatemah will say something and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so right. But because I haven't had the same life experiences, like I wouldn't think like that. I totally agree. But I think it's just like, not only from my point of view, not only has my own lived experience like kind of impacted that work, but also everyone else's lived experience has impacted the way I work as well. Like so many times Fatemah or one of the other youth voice advisors have said something and I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing, and I've like stolen it and I've been like, I'm gonna do that in my call, or that's how I'm gonna approach things because I just think they're all so awesome and it's just so cool to hear what they have to say. But yeah,
I love that. I think that that idea of other people's lived experiences and being in a space where you feel comfortable to share those and learn from one another, I think that's amazing. My next question is, what do you think that organizations get wrong about involving young people in funding decisions and in these processes? And what feels different about this model? I feel like you guys have touched on this a little bit, but in other spaces that you've been in compared to this, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, I feel like Ffion and Fatemah probably have more to compare it to, but things that I think are unique about or kind of special. Just one of the ways we work is very much continuous improvement. And I don't know, I kind of think some places might be a bit one and done and a bit like, oh yes, we've ticking a box of involving young people. Whereas we are constantly like, how can we improve this? How can we make it more meaningful? How can we get you more engaged? How can we give you more opportunities? How can we make the process just easier and smoother for everyone involved? Yeah, just basically continuously improve it, even though it it just warms my heart to hear you guys speak about how great your experience has been. But yeah, I guess it shows that we're doing something great, but we're always still constantly striving to make it better and really make sure that it is meaningful engagement. We use that phrase a lot, but meaningful engagement rather than tokenistic. So I think, yeah, that almost drive to continue to improve and build, even though what we're doing is good. But yeah, that strive for better, I think, is something that makes our program quite special.
I think I agree with everything Nadine has said so far, and I think organizations often get youth involvement wrong by assuming it means like either just asking young people like for once, like as I would say part of what they do, like consulting them a bit, and or like either just excluding them altogether. It's also something to really think about when we're talking about youth voice. It doesn't necessarily actually mean excluding adults, and it's also not about like just that expectation that young people need to do everything on their own for it to be a youth-led. And I think what feels different about this model is that young people and adults work alongside each other, and young people are trusted with real influence over decisions, and adults are there to support the process rather than, like leading it or speak on behalf of young people. Like we're here as young people and as like adults, like work alongside each other closely throughout the whole process. As we have explained earlier, we've got the like stage 1 of funding assessment and stage 2, and we are technically involved from the first stage until the end of that application, and whether it's successful or not, we are part of that process. And I think that makes it really special, and it's about that balance is what makes like participation meaningful. I think I always have said that I feel like this model is a great example to show other organizations that do work with young people what meaningful participation is in practice.
I agree with everything everybody has said. I think one thing that really sticks out to me, and that we try to kind of ensure in what we do, is that whenever our opinions or what we have to say is going somewhere else. So, for example, when we do peer review and we're all talking and Nadine writes it up, everything that's written is in our own words. It's never passed on by what Nadine assumes we think or assumes what we mean or things like that. It's always our exact words. And I think that's something that a lot of other organizations don't have when they're working with young people. They tend to make a lot of assumptions rather than take things word for word, and it's like our opinions and thoughts directly go wherever they need to go, like not cut down, not watered down. They just go as they are. If that's how we, like if we think that's how they should be, then that's what they are. There's no changes made to it. Something that I do agree with Nadine, that kind of the constant want and passion to keep improving is something that is here that a lot of other organisations don't have. Because I don't think we've ever had a meeting ever in the history of ever where we haven't been asked at least once if there's anything we need, or like if we have any questions, or if we could have thought anything could have been better in the meeting or things like that. It's always feedback. It's always about how we're feeling, if there's anything we'd like to change. Like, I don't think there's ever been a moment where that hasn't been a question that's up in the air and then been followed through with like more or less straight after where it's been possible, which is really cool. I think another thing is that, again, kind of like we have direct impact. We're not like hidden away. Like Fatemah said, like we're part of stage 1, we're part of stage 2, and then even at panel there's prior youth voice advisors, which I keep saying, but it's just so cool. That like we just like at every stage, like the youth voice advisors and like all the young people that work within the organisation, it's just direct. It's all straight, and it isn't consultation. We don't get an email once every 6 months saying, how do you feel about your experience currently? It's every meeting we're like, guys, how do we think we're doing? If it's not good, then we have a chat about that. And I just think that's really awesome. Whereas a lot of organisations are like, well, we have this thing coming up, we need to tick that box. We need young people to kind of be involved. And so we'll have a one-off, like everybody keeps saying, a one-off meeting for an hour. And then maybe we'll do something with that. Maybe we won't, it's our choice. We've spoken to them. So that's the box tick. So it doesn't really matter what we do with it. It's none of that. It's literally straight away just always, how do we feel it's going? Anything different? And it's always kind of about our journey as well. Is like we also are prioritized as individuals and our like with our own experiences. Like we have mentors. I don't know if you would call it a mentor. That's what I would call it. But as individuals, we have people that we look towards. So I have Nadine, and Fatemah has Verity. And so like we are always having like one-to-ones to talk about how our own personal progress is going, which I think a lot of other organisations lack. And yeah, I just think that's also something that's really cool. I think it's all really cool, but like I think that's really crucial because it kind of, in a way, humanizes us. We're not just like some random part of the process where we're considered every now and then. Like it's always about how we're feeling. It's always about how our personal journey looks and how the grand journey looks as a team, which I just think is really awesome.
And I just wanted to add something really quickly. It's also something already Ffion have mentioned, which is like about like meeting regularly, having that one-to-one. Love the word mentors. Like I think often organizations lack this, and I had experiences where I had like either like one time for a while like a meeting, and that was it. And I do agree that like often you don't get that experience of one-to-one support and someone there actually who's genuinely there to support you in your role, but also help you to get opportunities and like actually genuinely care about what you're interested in and what opportunities you can potentially get involved in. And I think being part of the fund as well, this is something really unique where you feel like the feedback you give, your interest, your input, everything is just really valued and listened to, and most importantly acted upon as well.
I'm blushing here. I just wanted to add quickly as well, something else that is really important to me is, like Ffion said, like humanizing the youth voice advisors. Like we speak about it like, oh, the youth voice advisors. I'm like, these are people. And for me, kind of the transparency and being open is something that's really important when I'm working with the team. Because yes, the feedback is so important to us, and it is valued and it is listened to. But Ffion also mentioned like where possible, and I think that's crucial. Is that I always try and be very transparent on like, actually this won't be possible to act upon because of X, Y, Z, or we can't do that right now, but we've got it on a document and we will come back to it at another time, and trying to be realistic as well as like empowering young people, but being realistic as well. Like, we are an arm's length government body. We cannot do everything all at once. We cannot build Rome in a day. And yeah, trying to be realistic at the same time. And I think that's almost, well, hopefully more empowering than just saying, yes, we'll do everything you say, and then not delivering on it.
I think, like, quickly, another like a really important thing is like that I think it's so normalized that like I forget until I go into other places, is that we're made to feel very equal. We're not made to feel like young people who are coming into a space to be like asked questions. Like, on a lot of the things we do, like in calls and stuff, we lead that. Like, we lead those calls when we're in them, and I think that's really awesome. And like, when we talk to portfolio officers, and when like even when we're talking to everyone in our like team, in our little circle, we're like we all talk as equals, we all are equals, we're all treated the same, we're all respected just as much, we're all given equal opportunity to speak, to say what we feel and things like that. And that's the thing that a lot of other organizations don't do. Like I said, a lot of organizations look down on young people, which is bizarre, but I think that's something that we definitely don't have here, is that we're all just on an even keel level, which is amazing. And I think other organizations could definitely take some inspo from that.
I love that. I think that's wonderful. And I have another question, which I learned about the 3Gs model in our last episode that we did. So for listeners who might not know, I would love for Ffion, Fatemah, if you feel comfortable, tell me a little bit about how the 3G model has impacted your work. If you could describe it in your own words, why it's important to you, tell me about that.
Yeah. I think as a youth voice advisor, I think it is something I naturally, and not just me, Ffion, all of us as a youth voice advisor naturally come back to when thinking about youth participation, because it really helps us guide discussion and a reflection on the quality of the youth involvement. I think it is a really useful module, and we had a lot of discussions about like whether if it's even possible to share it with other youth organizations for them to reflect on their own practice, because we just thought it was nice. Obviously have spoke to the previous youth advisors, and you probably know from them, they were the ones who initially developed that module, and now we're using it, and we just find it super helpful and really cool, because it really looks at like the gain, the governance, and the growth. And this is like really important to consider when we're involving young people. Obviously, by involving them, the organisation want to get something out of it, but also how they're contributing this back to the young person or the young people themselves. So we find that really useful to use. Ffion, I'm sure you have amazing ideas to share in here.
I think, like, to put it in simple terms, because obviously there might be people that haven't watched the prior episodes. I know I wing a lot of podcast episodes. Kind of, I don't know, in simple terms, to me, it's like the 3Gs are how we measure youth voice in other organizations, like in applications, in the calls. And like Fatemah said, it's something that we refer back to. So it is like the 3Gs are gain, growth, and governance. And I am a preacher for governance. That is always coming out of my mouth, and that's something I carry. The governance, for anyone who doesn't know what that means in that context, is like kind of the involvement of young people on all levels, and like how meaningful it is, sort of thing. And I always get gain and growth mixed up, but it's basically kind of like how the young people kind of grow, what skills they develop, and like also the gain is like the experiences they get, the opportunities they have that they might not usually have, and things like that. That's kind of like a baseline, but like Fatemah said, it's just kind of something that we always refer back to, and it's something we use as a meaningful measuring tool. And it is something that the youth voice advisors before us created, and I think they did a really good job. And I genuinely have no idea, like, when we're doing our calls and everything, like it's a it's a really good model to use. And like I've not looked at it and gone like there's gaps, or like the 3Gs also use the 3Es, like they don't miss anything. I don't feel like there's any gaps, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that it does quite almost perfectly like measure youth voice. And so it's really great. But it's just kind of like in the simple terms, it's just like a measuring tool that we use, and it's just something it's really great. And I agree, like, and we've talked about it before, it'd be amazing if like other organizations could just, if you could just be like, if you could press like, or as people say, wave a magic wand and be like, here, have this in your organization now, like that would be fab. But it's something that I think is a really powerful tool that we have, and I think it's something that the greater, wider world would definitely benefit from having. But I am also kind of glad and really, really, really grateful that we have it first, because it's just so awesome. But no, it's just kind of, it's just a really great measuring tool that was created by some really great young people that I'm really grateful for. And I know Fatemah probably is too, and the other youth voice advisors, because it's also something that's really simple to measure youth voice when we're doing things like calls and peer review and things like that. But yeah.
That's awesome. My last question for all of you, and we can start with Nadine, and then we can move on to Fatemah and Ffion. But what are you excited about? Fatemah and Ffion, you're both staying on for another term, which is very exciting. But of course, I also want to ask you, Nadine, what are you excited about for the Youth Voice Advisors? And yeah, take that however you would like. I think there's a lot to be excited about. So Nadine, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I am excited to continue working with the lovely Ffion and Fatemah, of course. I'm excited to get 2 new people join. As they said, like even amongst 4 people, 4 youth voice advisors, there's so much diversity. So I'm excited to see what the new people bring, how they kind of mesh with the team, and the new perspectives that will bring. I'm excited because we're building, as I've said, I love the word building, but we're building on a model here, and we're continuing to improve. And probably from my previous answer, you can hear how passionate I am about that, and yeah, always making things better. So excited to see, I guess, where the next year takes us. And also for myself, I've now had this year experience, and I can use that to continue to improve as well. So yeah, excited just to see it keep growing, keep getting better.
Well, for me, I really enjoyed my time with the fund and getting to know the lovely Ffion and the other youth voice advisors, and obviously Nadine and Verity and literally everyone. So I'm happy, and I'm excited as well to meet the other 2 youth voice advisors as well. And I genuinely felt my involvement allowed me to, influence decisions and contribute a meaningful impact for the young people across the UK, hopefully. So I'm just really excited to continue learning about different communities and projects, and to keep supporting work that embeds youth voice in a meaningful way. And yeah.
Excited isn't a good enough word, I'm afraid. I am over the moon. I'm so excited. So excited to carry on for another year. I like Nadine, and I'm sure Fatemah said, but I'm really excited to meet the new youth voice advisors. We've had such an amazing team to work with this year, and it's been so lovely to work with everyone, and I'm so excited to carry on with Fatemah. But I'm also really excited to meet 2 new youth voice advisors, and I think it will be a new learning curve, because we had a youth voice advisor that carried on from there last year, which was really cool. And so I think it's gonna be really cool to kind of go into the process that they went through of kind of, we've had our experience, but also like helping the new youth voice advisors. And I think something that we're looking at doing is, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Something we're looking at doing is having the new youth voice advisors shadow us. That's something I'm really excited about, is kind of helping in any way possible, because I remember it, like, it was so supportive when I started, and like when we kind of got things going. But like, I think the new process is also like a lot more supportive in its own way, and I'm just really excited to be a part of that. I'm also really excited knowing that we still have calls to do, and we'll be doing more and more calls, and like that's really exciting, because I just love meeting the young people that we meet when we do calls. They're also diverse, and they all have their own backstory, and it's kind of like the way I'd like to explain it is, it's kind of like unlocking new characters in your own storyline, and so it's like getting to hear their experiences and like what they have to say and all of that. It's just so much fun. And although like what we do is really important and it does feel important, it's also just such a great experience that it doesn't feel difficult. Just like, especially like not anymore. Like, even if at first it was hard because it was new, now it's not like it doesn't feel hard at all. The support's there, and it's just like it is just experiencing something. Like, it's just new opportunities every time we meet people. I'm also really looking forward to kind of like all of the things that we do where we get to collaborate on different things like this, and being here with you, Lily, is really exciting and fun. So kind of doing more stuff like that would be really cool and really fun, that I would be looking forward to. But I think I'm just so excited. I'm so, like, as I said, I don't have a better word, but I think exciting isn't a good enough word. I am over the moon, and I'm just so happy that we're going to be doing it another year. And I'm so grateful that I still get to work with Fatemah and Nadine and Verity and Joe, and I'm just, yeah, I'm so happy.
That's awesome. That is a wonderful way for us to tie up this episode. I think excitement is the key word throughout all of this. But thank you all so much for joining me on the podcast and for all of the incredible work you're doing. For anyone listening, if you are interested in learning more about embedding youth voice in your organization and how the National Lottery Community Fund does it, we are going to put some links in the description so you can check those out. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join us for future episodes as we continue exploring youth social action, what it means, why it matters, and the incredible young people driving change in their communities. We will see you next time.